Hello and welcome to Classical Stuff You Should Know, a podcast about history and philosophy and books and old things. My name is Thomas Magby. I'm joined as always by Mr. AJ Hainenberg.
That's me.
And Mr. Graham Donaldson.
Hello.
And after taking a week off, is everyone feeling rested? Everyone feeling good?
Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed.
Feeling hyped.
I'm slightly
hyped.
I'm slightly under the weather, but doing my best here. Today, Graham, you are leading our episode. What are we talking about today?
We're getting back into following our long series on the Plantagenets. This is, I don't know what episode number this is.
I was going to ask,
War of the Roses.
You think episode 4?
7?
No, wait, what?
No.
Of this new one, didn't he do?
Oh, the new one? I thought are we continuing
this
the old
is maybe episode 4 of the
yeah.
War of the Roses?
I think it's 4.
We haven't even gotten to Duke of York yet, so we got a ways to go.
But on the whole Plantagenet series, it's like, what, like 9?
Yeah,
Because we did 6 at first, and then plus these. I think that's right.
It's like 10.
Yeah.
And anyway, for people people like this stuff, and so I like to maybe give the shout out to some of the resources that I've used. A lot of this comes from Winston Churchill's history of what's he actually call it? A history of the English-speaking people. This is from Volume 1. This also a lot of it comes from Dan Jones, who wrote a book called The War of the Roses, and then also, the Wikipedia pages. Actually, I didn't really look at Wikipedia that much for this episode.
Really?
Yeah, I sometimes do just to make sure that I get dates right.
Right.
But I didn't really look at it from this episode, so
That's probably a good sign, right?
I guess so.
It means you got enough information
Sure.
from the
Yeah.
books.
And then also just from as a kid growing up and hearing these stories and undergrad and all that stuff. So anyway, where we left off was Henry VI is King of England. And his father was Henry V, the great glorious king who died early. And Henry VI was a little king from when he was a little baby. And he was crowned King of France and King of England. And he was like 9 months old. And this was a problem. What do you guys remember from Henry VI when he was growing up? Do you remember anything, Hannenberg?
Gosh, it's been so long.
It's been a while.
Okay, well,
can you catch me up again?
We don't need to play that game then. So I'll tell you. So if you remember, Henry VI was super awkward. He was that kid that was either he's really, really,
Was it
really
the monkish
smart.
king?
Yeah, he's either really, really, really smart or he's real dumb.
Right.
Can't tell.
And he didn't really want to be king that bad?
He didn't really want to be king that bad. He and so we sort of conclude, and I think that it's fair that some people thought maybe autism
Right.
or some sort of Asperger's, definitely
we brought that
social
up last time.
awkward,
Yeah.
where he is. Sometimes you think he's locked in and he's playing 4D chess with me right now, and other times you're like, I think he's literally a potato. I don't know. There's nothing going on.
Right.
So it was hard to tell. Anyway, so he's king. He doesn't want to be king. And there were two parties who kind of were in a truce over him because as the king went, so went the country. And when you have a king who's kind of either 4D chess or a potato, can't tell which, this is a little concerning for the nation. So he had the one party, which was his uncle, the Duke of Gloucester, and then the other party, which was the Beauforts. The Beauforts? Yeah, the Beauforts. Or the Bedfords. No, Beauforts.
You could say either of those, and we would believe
Well,
you.
but someone's going to be like, well, actually, it was the Duke of LaFontaine.
Yeah, let him send an email. It's
The
fine.
Beauforts.
Yeah.
It was the Beauforts. And the Beauforts were also technically related to Henry VI, but I looked it up. Turns out that way back in the day, John of Gaunt, who was, if we're going to remember this, John of Gaunt was brother to Edward III. John of Gaunt was...
Was he the super loyal guy?
He was a super loyal guy. He was the king he was the sort of the duke the guy that got all his stuff taken from Richard II, which prompted Henry IV to kick his butt.
Right.
So Henry IV was John of Gaunt's son.
Right.
Anyway, so going back to that, John of Gaunt was also a little bit of a philanderer. He liked to sow the wild oats.
You shared a story about that was during a Patreon episode.
That's right.
We can't share it here.
I won't. But on his deathbed, he revealed to Richard II, or revealed to somebody. No, it was Henry VI. That was right. He revealed to somebody.
The results of his impropriety. It was
Henry
the future
VI.
king.
Yeah, he revealed to one of the future. Yeah, maybe it was Henry V. He revealed to the future king, hey, don't sleep around, or
this is what's
going to happen to you. And the king was like, noted. Anyway, so he went and had a bunch of bastard kids. And one of the lines of those bastard kids was the Beauforts.
Oh, there you go.
So Now, the Beauforts were bastard children from John of Gaunt, and this really bothered them because everyone kind of like made fun of them at school and stuff.
Right.
And so they actually, and people were kind of nervous because they were getting to be very powerful, very rich. You can remember from past episodes. And so Parliament actually had to make an act to say, okay, you're not bastards, even though you are, but you're not. But you can't inherit the throne, but no one can call you a bastard anymore. And they were like, good.
Deal.
So deal.
We'll take it.
We'll take it. Because like John of Gaunt, I think the argument that Parliament made was that like, John of Gaunt actually truly loved the woman that he had all these children with,
Oh,
and
really?
would have married her instead, but didn't because he was married to somebody else. Right. And so when Parliament says you're in love, it's got to be true. Yeah. That's when you know it's real, boys.
No, okay, so this is a side question. Maybe one of you guys knows. Is this where a bastard sword comes from?
So the bastard sword is because it is, I think it's not, you can use it in either hand. I can't remember.
I'll Google this.
So I can hear that well, actually, email coming. But anyway.
Just a long sword.
So, the bastard sword. It's shorter, it's weighted differently. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Googling.
So on the one side, we got Gloucester, who, if you remember him, he was like the jovial guy, and he was Captain War with France.
Yep.
That's something to remember for this episode.
Okay.
Gloucester always wanted to fight the French. The Beauforts were on the other side, and they were less open war with France. And both of them are sort of vying for control over this young, impressionable king. Both sides kind of realized, listen, our king is kind of weird, and it would be good for him if he had some kind of companion, a friend. He needs a bro. He needs a best friend. He needs, Bert needs his Ernie, right? Like, he needs somebody to help round out the weirdness, to sort of bring him into the fold. And at this time, there was a young guy whose name was William de la Pole.
Okay.
And he was the Earl of Suffolk. So I'm going to refer to him as the Earl of Suffolk or Suffolk.
Okay.
What did you learn, Hannenberg, about the sword?
Hold on, translate.
It's basically
translating
sort
French
of
to English.
Yeah, sort of unknown origin is what the French
there you
thing
go.
says.
Or I've also some say that it's between a one-hander sword and a two-hander sword.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not for two hands, not quite for one hand, a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or of dubious design.
Yeah.
So far, it doesn't seem to be a
Clear
consensus.
one, but
Yeah.
All right, so you got the Earl of Suffolk, and he was he comes from a sort of a family of wealthy traders. They lived in the city of Hull, which is sort of a trading place. And he made a bunch of money as a merchant, so the de la Poles. You guys might remember the de la Poles from the previous episode because Will de la Pole's sister ran a pretty dope monastery.
oh, we
And
talked
that
about
monastery, or the abbot, the priory,
Yeah.
and that place was where the little Tudor boys were.
Yeah.
So remember, the little Tudor boys were getting a sweet education, and de la Pole had those boys there. So, we'll talk about Earl of Suffolk in a second. But so people were concerned that we had a crappy king. Not crappy. Well, the king needed to do two things in the medieval society. There was two sort of roles the king needed to fill. One, he needed to hold up justice. The king's law needed to be law. So whenever there was an injustice, it had a rudimentary court of appeals system, but eventually things would come up to the king and he would enact justice and say what's what. And so even if things didn't go all the way up to the king, the country, the society needed to know that if things escalated up to the king, there would be like justice. And so lesser courts or lesser districts could make decisions knowing in the support that England had laws that the king was going to uphold. So the king needed to uphold the king's justice. And the other thing is that the king needed to fight in the wars. He needed to go off and he needed to throw down, he needed to be awesome, and he needed to be smart, and he needed to beat up the foreigners. And then all the people would love him, right? So this is sort of the two functions. You need to fight in wars, you need to uphold the justice. Henry VI did not really elicit much confidence in the whole fighting thing. There's going to be some hilarious stories later on about his views on, like, just sort of, rowdy boy stuff. He just wasn't into it. And so he didn't. No one could even envision him like wearing armor and holding a sword. It was kind of a laughable thing. So that's not great. But hey, we can delineate that to some of our beefier dudes, and they can go off and they can fight in the king's name. Problem solved. No real crisis had yet happened in regards to law. So the whole veneer or the whole like sort of expectation was that the laws are going to work and things are going to be upheld and there's not going to be arbitrariness and the society is going to hold itself together. So this is what the two things that the king needed. But people knew, hey, if you got kind of a weak king, we've got future problems. So they're like, what we need to do is we need to get a buddy for him. So they got the Earl of Suffolk. The English people were pretty ticked over how life had gone over the past couple of 20 years that Henry VI had been king. Remember, Henry V, he was going to be king of England, king of France. He was married to like a dope French princess. He had the Battle of Agincourt. He had all of these victories. Everything was coming up English in the people's minds. And then, since then, you kind of had everything kind of slowly chipped away. Joan of Arc came in, and everyone was like, oh gosh, God's with the French. That's not good. And so she sort of had these great victories. Crazy King Charles died, and then his son was kind of an awesome king, and he came in. He kind of reinvigorated the French people. And so England had this sort of long-standing army in the north of France during the whole reign of Henry VI for like 20 years. And everyone's kind of waiting, fingers crossed, that Henry's going to be awesome and he's going to ride in and we're going to keep on rolling, boys. But as time goes on, it's not looking that way. Henry VI had one great passion, and that was he wanted to create places of education. He was really passionate about education. So he created a new boys' school called Eton College, which still exists to this day, which is the most, one of the most prestigious institutions in the world.
That's awesome.
And he also created an institution called King's College at a university called Cambridge.
Wow.
So King's College still exists today, and that was instituted by Henry VI. He was super jazzed and into education, and he thought that this was, really important for a king to do. And everyone was like,
awesome.
What a friggin' nerd. Like,
Yeah.
we need to go beat up the French. Anyway, so there's some concern that all he was doing was he was carrying himself with education and these institutions, and he wanted King's College to be a place where the poor clerks could go and can learn about God. And everyone was like, oh, awesome. Okay. So there was a lot of grumbly boys. A lot of grumbly boys in England these days, from the nobles all the way down to the people. And you have a standing army whose only job in life is to throw down, and they're in the north of France, and they're like sitting on their hands, and they're getting all these big like morale dumps. All these battles were like, Joan of Arc's coming, and that lost that one, and then our king's like a weirdo starting like a school, and so he's not going to be as cool as his dad, and so a lot of grumbly boys.
Sure.
And people began to whisper, listen, this might be God's judgment on us. Not only because we burned Joan of Arc, that wasn't a great move.
Sure.
But this is also God's judgment because, well, we disrupted the whole line of kings thing. We killed Richard II, or we had Henry IV, this Lancastrian king, from, jump the line and boot Richard II off. And this is the reason, generations later, God's being like, you jerks. And this is God's judgment for us. Getting rid of Richard. So there's some grumbly boys in England right now. Okay. And so, yes, it's important to remember that we got this like long-standing sort of professional armied class in England. And the only reason that they're like not completely decimated is they had awesome archers. And so the French were aware of this and they couldn't, completely go after them. So the Earl of Suffolk, he's kind of a cool guy. He's a little bit of the opposite of Henry VI. If Henry VI is kind of like bookish and pious and, sort of like very clean and very, hard to read, William de la Pole, Earl of Suffolk, he's kind of cool. He fought in France during these wars, and one battle didn't go very well, and he was about to be captured by a French, just like commoner. And he's like, oh man, that's so embarrassing to be captured by a commoner. So he knighted the French soldier before he captured him. He's like, hey, listen, French guy, I don't want to be captured by a peasant. Do you want to be a knight in the English regiment, and the French guy was like, "Je ne sais quoi tu dis." And and then he's like, "No, cool, you're a knight." And so he had the little French man kneel, and he made him a knight, and then he let that knight capture him, so he would never have been captured by a commoner. Okay. Awesome. That's a cool move.
If you were knighted, would you still capture the guy?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because you're a French, you're a
Would you
little
trust him
French
as
guy.
you kneel and he knights you with
Yeah.
his sword?
Yeah.
Like, I'm about to capture this guy and he has a sword at my neck? I don't
Yeah.
feel comfortable with that.
That's a good
Anyway,
point.
so he was, that's probably a good point. There was probably more than one Frenchman.
I would imagine.
So he knighted the dude,
yeah.
so he wasn't captured by a commoner. He married one of the babes of the Middle Ages. And he married a Chaucer. Was her name Anne? I can't remember her name
Wait,
was.
of the Chaucers?
Yes, of the Chaucers.
Wow.
He married a Chaucer.
Was this after Chaucer, or when was Chaucer?
Yes, so this is one of Chaucer's granddaughter, I think.
Okay.
And shoot, I knew
Do
I
they still
had
have
these.
their wine business?
Where is that cool?
Yeah, Chaucer died in
Yeah.
1400.
So it was her third marriage. She was known as being one of the most beautiful. I think it was Alice Chaucer or Anne Chaucer. I can't remember her first name.
Duchess of Suffolk?
Yes,
That's
Duchess-
Alice Chaucer.
Alice Chaucer. Cool. All right. So he married her, and she was known to be an absolute, just a smoke show. Like she was the great beauty of the Middle Ages.
You cannot tell from, I don't know, like the
The
statues.
statues don't
The
look
statues
it.
don't do it. The
Yeah,
statues don't do it. But she was
Her
face
very
is like-
long
yeah,
face with
really,
a
yeah.
huge pointy nose.
Oh, we'll talk about that tomb in a second.
Okay.
So he was married to was it Anne? Alice. Alice Chaucer. She was very rich from the Chaucer fortune. Now she was the granddaughter or something, married, or she was related to Geoffrey Chaucer. And this meant that when Earl of Suffolk married her, he married into the influence of the Beauforts, because the Beauforts were friends with the Chaucers, and Alice Chaucer had all of this money. She was one of the few women in the Middle Ages to be put into the prestigious Order of the Garter, which was what the cool knight fraternity that Edward III started, where all the cool knights got to be, the Order of the Garter. So she got to be part of the Order of the Garter, and she has a very influential tomb if you're in the art world. So when she died, there is her tomb. It's like a pure alabaster top of her in her youth, looking beautiful. Now you guys just said that she didn't look beautiful, but whatever.
Sorry.
So looking youthful and alive and radiant. And then below that, sort of like in the tomb, so it's like the alabaster top sitting on a platform, and then underneath it you can kind of see into the fake tomb. And there is another statue in there meant to be her as a dying dead corpse. And so you've got this youthful girl on top, and then this corpse marble statue on the inside, and then there's the inscription, what you are I once was, and what I am you one day will be. This was a very sort of common pious thing to put on tombs, basically as a memento mori. So her tomb is quite striking in that they've got the beautiful lively effigy of her on top, and then on the inside of the tomb you've got this sort of corpse you've got this carved out of corpse marble version of her, and then this inscription saying take stock of your life, you will one day be like me. Oh man, so cool.
That's cool.
Anyway, so this is Alice Chaucer. Suffolk is married to her, and because the Chaucers had this priory, and so William de la Pole had his sister become the prioress, and then they sent the Tudor boys there. Anyway, so everything's all intertwined. So Earl of Suffolk, he becomes friends to the 23-year-old king. And the nation has a little bit of a problem. And it's a problem that's going to be solved with getting the king married. But the problem is that we don't really have a clear heir to the throne. Because when Henry V died, young, he only had the one kid. And the one kid was Henry VI. And he didn't have a whole brood or litter of other kids that could take over if Henry VI died. You had Duke of Gloucester, so he's next in line essentially. Because he is Henry V's brother, he's uncle to the king, so he's next in line.
But he'd already like run off and said he wouldn't do it, right? Isn't that
Duke
guy?
of Gloucester?
Is he the one who like cheated on his wife?
Yeah, that's
okay.
him.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, he'd be king. Oh, yeah. We're gonna get into that cheating on the wife story because that comes up. We'll go into the detail on that one.
Okay.
And then the girl he cheated on with, she got burned, or she got said she was a witch.
I don't remember that part.
we'll get
I
to
also
that
don't
part.
remember that.
It's fun. Remember, she was burning. They accused her of burning wax figures of the king, and that's why he was so weird.
I think I remember that.
Okay, we'll recap that.
I
Anyway,
apologize.
Duke of Gloucester, he's kind of in line, but he's older than the king, and the Beauforts do not like him.
Yep.
And then the only after that, you've got 4 families that could claim direct descendancy from Edward III. And because of the whole usurping Richard II thing, everyone had a claim. But only one guy had a direct claim of an unbroken male lineage back to Edward III, and that was a guy by the name of Richard, Duke of York. So we'll talk about the Duke of York towards the end of this podcast. But the problem is that you got Henry VI, and he's kind of a doofus, and he's got no kids, and he's 23, and he's not like the greatest ruler of all time,
Right.
and he has no wife. And so the Earl of Suffolk comes in, they're like, all right, William de la Pole, you've got one mission. That's to find somebody that can marry this guy. And like maybe man him up a little. Like we need somebody that can maybe inspire him to greatness.
Get his nose out of them books.
Get his nose out of them books. Get interested in like horseback riding and bloodshed and
Falcon or something.
Yeah. We need somebody. And so Earl of Suffolk's like, awesome, cool, I'm off. And so he was going to go to France. Everybody kind of knew that there was one family that had this like awesome princess that everyone should go for. And her name was Margaret of Anjou. And so that was his first stop. And he needed to go check it out and make sure that it was cool. But before the Earl of Suffolk left, he said, listen, I want a guarantee from Parliament that if this thing goes bad, I'm not in trouble. And if
that's smart.
he's like, I'm going and I'm going to have to make some promises to have people to marry this king. And if it comes back and in the negotiations, you like go through my notes and you're like, you could have done this better, you could have done that better, and you get mad at me, I want to be pre-pardoned for any bad things that you guys think, for any nasty outcomes. If we have if the king has ugly lizard children, I want to be pre-pardoned.
Sure.
And Parliament was like, okay.
Getting a pre-pardon has never gone wrong before.
Yes, pre-pardon.
What could he
go wrong?
possibly do?
So the Earl of Suffolk went off with his "Don't get mad at me" guarantee. He gets pre-pardoned for anything that happens, and he goes off to France.
Did he marry her?
He does not marry her.
Okay.
He goes off to France. No, he actually. So even though
He's not going to abuse that get out of
he's
jail
not
free
going to
card?
abuse that get out of jail free card. It is a bad move for him to have done. But every indication seems to be that he had some degree of warmth to our king, our kind of like childish king.
So he did kind of like him.
He was doing his best, but
He was doing his best, but he knew that
it's gonna be tough.
we got these factions.
Yeah.
We got the Beauforts and the Gloucesters. We got people who think the king is our punishment from God.
Right.
And then we've got all these varying people that really can step up and say, there's a good argument why I should be king.
There's also a bunch of teachers who really love this guy.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. And so the Earl of Suffolk just wants to make sure he's got some guarantees. And so they're like, all right, off you go. So he goes off and he goes to Margaret of Anjou, and she is known as being, Churchill calls her beautiful, charming, spirited, and of amazing intellect, something like that. She is just this gem of a girl.
She would be perfect for being queen.
Perfect for being queen.
Right.
Now, the problem is that, and she was niece of the king, niece of the King of France. So she's from royal blood. Her mom is the Queen of France. No, sorry, not her mom. Her aunt is Queen of France. So the Queen of France is her dad's sister.
Yeah.
And so, and so he goes to Anjou. The trouble is that Anjou and the Duke of Anjou, the dad,
They hate him. They hate the King of England.
they hate the King of England. They can get over that.
Okay.
But they don't have any cash. They don't have any money. So Anjou, the ancestral homelands of Anjou, is a place called Anjou, and another place called Maine, spelt the same way, like the state. And so they have Maine and they have Anjou. Turns out, Maine is under the control of the English.
Okay.
It's one of those contested territories in the north or something, and so the English so they don't even own their own country. So she has no dowry whatsoever. She's got like 20,000 francs, which is like breakfast.
Yeah.
So she has nothing. And the dad sounds awesome on paper. He was the king of Jerusalem and Sicily. That's dope.
That's dope.
Except that no king of Jerusalem, no Christian king of Jerusalem had set foot in Jerusalem for like 100 years, and the Turks owned it. And he's like,
He's like, in quotes,
yes,
the king of Jerusalem.
extension.
Yeah, it's like you can be king of my boot, right? Like he's not the king of anything. The Turks are in control of Jerusalem.
Right.
And the king of Sicily didn't even own any square inch of Sicily. He was just the king of Sicily, and he wasn't allowed to live there.
Great.
So he's like the king of Jerusalem and Sicily, which sounds awesome, like sweet business card, but it doesn't mean anything.
Sure.
And he was fighting in Italy all the time, and it turns out that dad had spent like a huge part of his life just in like foreign custody. He was just like in jail a lot from fighting in wars that he couldn't win, which meant that Margaret growing up, meant that sort of the Duke of Anjou, his wife was kind of in charge of the home affairs, and that meant that Margaret, under her mom, kind of got to see, okay, this is how the world works. This is how being a woman in a man's game is played. And she's 15 years old, so she's not very old, but she was good at it. Beautiful, charming. Churchill says that she, very similar to Joan of Arc, although through very differing means, had the same knack of getting men to fight for her. Not for her, but for her causes.
Right.
So Margaret of Anjou was very charming, spirited. I believe in our next episode, she's going to like pick up a sword and like fight
Oh, wow.
in some
Sweet.
battles
Yeah,
later
seriously.
on.
That's super cool.
She's pretty awesome. And she's beautiful.
And are we rooting for her to marry?
We're rooting
this
for her to
doofy
marry
king?
the king.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
but the
think
king's
so.
kind of doofus. But I mean,
I feel like she's going to be wasted on him.
but she's all girl. Like she is.
Why doesn't she marry that guy that's the king's best friend?
Earl
He seems
Suffolk?
cool.
Earl Suffolk. He's
Yeah,
already
he knows what's
married.
going on.
He's married to the babe. He's married to Alice.
Oh, that's right.
Chaucer.
He's got babe, Chaucer
Yeah.
babe.
Chaucer, yeah.
So, because everyone's hoping with the right woman, maybe you can make a man out of this king. Maybe you can pull him out of the
She'll
books.
make a
and-
man
exactly.
out of him.
So he goes, and then Margaret of Anjou.
Raging fire.
She has. So they've got no money, right?
Right.
And so they're going through this sort of agreement, and the Earl of Suffolk, they strike a deal. So it's going to be a real poor dowry, and even the court of Anjou is like, listen, I hear your king's kind of like, he's kind of like a dud, and we're sending like the best flower of French chivalry to go marry this guy. Not chivalry, the French flower of court to go marry this guy. We will do it,
Yeah.
but we want Maine back. And the Earl of Suffolk said, okay, but nobody can ever know. Because remember, there's a bunch of grumbly boys in England,
Right.
and those grumbly boys would be grumbling about the fact that like their awesome battles of Agincourt and taking over France were slowly being dwindled and whittled away from a doofus king and warring factions between Gloucester and Beaufort. Yeah. And so Suffolk is like, listen, nobody can ever know. And it was known as the secret article. Luckily, this never comes back up in history again. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true. So so it was like, the Anjou is getting Maine back. And
So they all agree to this.
they all agree to this.
Okay, but somehow she doesn't actually end up marrying the king.
Oh no, she does.
got
Yeah,
it.
she becomes Queen of England.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so a fun fact. Apparently,
She's his main squeeze.
yeah. Hey-o. So one fun thing, which sounds super sketchy, is that in order to solidify the deal, what they do is she has a proxy marriage to the king then and there, and the person who stands in for the king is Suffolk.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's very weird.
very
Apparently, this
weird.
was a common thing.
So he marries this babe.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he marries this babe, but he's like,
On behalf
I am
of
but
him.
an avatar of the king.
Yeah, still weird.
Now, it is not, now, I don't think that the proxy stood in anything further than the ceremony, if
Yeah,
you get
sure.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
But,
I didn't have any doubts about that.
Yeah, exactly.
oh, well, you never know, because remember, she's going to go marry, like, a wet Kleenex of a man.
Right.
And Earl of Suffolk's kind of cool, but remember, he's already married to the Chaucer girl.
Right.
So, anyway, so there's no indication of impropriety. So they have this proxy marriage. And it's so that she can have like the beautiful French court marriage, or she can do all her French customs, because she's going to go to England and do like her English marriage customs. So she has her like marriage in France. The Earl of Suffolk stands in as proxy, and this basically means like done deal.
This happened.
This is happening.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we're sending her off to England, we know that when they get there, she's going to be married. If for some reason the king's like, no, I don't like her, we can now have some sort of argument. You're technically proxy married.
Yeah.
And who knows how the Pope's going to land on that one.
That's a great point.
Loose cannon. All right. So she comes back. William de la Pole, Earl of Suffolk, absolutely triumphant. Both chambers of Parliament, the Lords and the House of Commons, applaud him.
Yeah.
Well done, Earl of Suffolk. You brought back the babiest babe of all of medieval world to marry our king.
Right.
She will make a man out of him, and hopefully they will have babies. Because we need to replenish the stock of our English royal family. Because it's just Henry VI and then a bunch of question marks.
Right.
The first question mark was Duke of Gloucester. So everyone's happy. It's 1445. They've got a wedding. And
Is the Duke of Gloucester happy also? Does
Duke of Gloucester's he's happy. He's happy.
He doesn't want to be king?
No.
Okay.
His wife, however.
Yeah, there we go.
So Duke of Gloucester.
Miss Chaucer?
No. The Duke. He was asking about the Duke of Gloucester.
Gloucester, yeah.
You're talking about Suffolk.
Suffolk is the Chaucer one.
Suffolk.
Yeah.
Got it.
I know.
I'm
So-
trying to
So many
okay.
people. I know.
So the marriage is a success. He actually loves Margaret.
Oh.
And Margaret seems to have taken a liking for him. He's not,
That's what you want to say after a wedding, is that the
He
wife
loves
is,
her, and she's okay
no,
with
she,
it.
but she learns pretty quick.
doesn't hate him. Yeah.
She learns pretty quick that she can like cock her head or wink her eye, and she's got him. So she learns pretty quickly that she can have control over him. And
Oh, she's going to run this country.
And he is in love with her.
Yeah.
He thinks she's amazing and beautiful and gorgeous and God's gift, and like he is just head over heels in love with this girl, devoted to her. And strangely enough, this devotion kind of creeps some people out.
Oh.
There are some people in the Middle Ages that thought that was maybe not a good thing, a good quality for a husband to have, was sort of like,
So, like
too
love?
much deference to his wife.
Okay.
Yeah, too much love for his wife.
He was uxorious.
Yes, he was luxurious. Maybe this was the worry. I think it's quite sweet, but they think that it was luxurious, and so
Is
there's
that what that word means? Just like
Luxurious means an over deference to your spouse,
Is that still like
specifically man to wife.
is it actually? Do they have a good sense for what is too much, or is it just like loving your wife in the first place is viewed
It's
as a
not.
bad
Lo-
thing?
it is like a sickly sweet over deference to your wife.
Yes.
Okay.
maybe Henry had that. He maybe has that as he gets older, but at the beginning he loves her, and there would be times where like, there would be a party and these lords would bring over like, dancy bosom ladies, and the king. Well, I'll read you the story.
Okay, hold on. Uxorious, having or showing an excessive or submissive fondness for one's wife.
Got it. Okay.
So there was a certain level. So the king was like very chaste before marriage, and everyone was like, "Hey, king, aren't you going to be like a cool young king and go off into like the bars and stuff?" And he was like, "No, of course not." He's very pious, very chaste, and so this actually made some of the nobles nervous because they're like, "Are we even going to get a kid out of this king?" And because there were stories like this. So here we go. There was one record that the king was wont utterly to avoid the unguarded sight of naked persons. So he doesn't like naked people. When one Christmas, quote, a certain great lord brought before him a dance or show of young ladies with bared bosoms, the king very angrily averted his eyes, turned his back on them, and went out to his chamber. I think this is the king.
That sounds like a bad bachelor's party. Like,
Yeah,
what is
so
Yeah.
the king had no time for this. He
Right.
did not like he didn't think this was great. He thought this was like wrong. And
Or was he looking forward to marriage? Like
he was.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and he loved Margaret.
Yeah.
And there are many stories usually like the queen had her own chamber and the king had his own chamber,
Right.
and they had to come together every now and then, but then they would go back to their chambers. Very quickly, the king and the queen got rid of that custom and co-owned the same chamber and slept in the same bed for their marriage.
Wow.
And much
awesome.
and so like a lot of the chamber ladies who are used to like coming into the room and it's just going to be the queen to get her dressed came in. They like the king would be there being like, "Good morning," and they'd be like, "Ah!" And so there's all these stories about these like scandalized chambermaids who like couldn't even fathom the fact that husband and wife would be in the same bed. So
That's hilarious.
So that I read that story and I find it to be I find Henry VI to be very charming.
He's charming.
Yeah,
That's
he's very
exactly,
charming.
yeah.
He's like, a bunch of bros are like, "Hey, check her out," and he's like, "I'm a married man," and he like
Exactly.
walked out of the room. And they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, what a moron."
Yeah.
Anyway.
How is he saying no to my weird boob show?
Yeah, exactly.
Do they end up having kids together also?
Eventually.
Okay, but it's going to be a while.
It's going to be a while. It's
Yeah.
going to make people nervous.
Yeah.
Okay, so shoot, I put time on. I don't know what time we got.
I can
Sorry,
check the measures.
I should have put it. I don't know. It's
okay, I got
we're
you.
going on.
You got some time.
Okay. So, all right, where were we? Oh, yes. So the king is married. Everyone's super happy. And then the Beauforts look at this and they're like, okay, he's going to have a kid eventually. He doesn't have a kid now. Who is the biggest threat to the king? And also, who do we hate? Gloucester.
Right.
So the Beauforts are like, now's our chance to go after Gloucester. But they're like, well, we need the king to be on our side. Well, there's only one way to get the king on our side. Get the queen on our side.
Right.
So they go to the queen and they're like, Your Majesty, French princess, who's now the Queen of England. There's this guy, Duke of Gloucester. He's next in line to the throne. And he's bad and he should go away. And the queen's like, gotcha. So all this side, they had sort of got power because remember, William de la Pole, Earl of Suffolk, was on their team. Everyone had applauded him. He was the golden boy in court and he was a Beaufort's friend. Gloucester was sort of off in his countryside. Like he loved having artists and plays and all the sort of, he was like very much almost like a Renaissance man before the Renaissance. Like he just loved literature and art and music and he sort of invited all those people to come to his palace. And so he was off in the country doing this. Well, he didn't really want to be king as far as we knew. He, wanted one thing. Fight the French.
Right.
He was Captain Fight French. And that wasn't going very well. His wife, however, the one that he left the Duchess of Hainault for, his wife, she was like, wait a minute, my husband is next in line to be king. If Weird Henry VI dies, I would be Queen of England.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Now, to her credit, she didn't actually go and try to murder the king, but what she
It's
did
more like
do,
a Macbeth situation.
No, what she did do, she was never going to get Gloucester to do it.
Right.
What she did was she went to her favorite astrologers and her favorite necromancers, and she said, hey, listen, I need to know, in your best guess, when Henry VI is going to die.
There's enough necromancers to have a favorite.
Yeah. Oh, these were...
Is there like who wants? What does a bad necromancer
Well, the
look
thing
like?
is, necromancers, maybe
I
not
woke his
necromancers,
arm up. That's about best I can do.
but definitely the astrologers. The astrologers and, sort of like they actually had academic jobs in universities, these astrologers. And I don't know, but the necromancers, they were probably like, I don't know, like the
Adjunct faculty.
the TAs or something. Anyway, so she goes to her favorite astrologers and necromancers.
By necromancer, like they talk with the dead? Is
Yeah.
that what we're- Okay.
Yeah,
got it.
she's like, listen, I need you to like get to your contacts, look at the stars, do all your dark arts, whatever you need to do. I need to know when the king is going to die. Is he going to die before he has a kid? That's
Right.
all I want to know.
Right.
That's an innocent ask.
Right.
Right?
It's not, though. It's definitely not. She's also motivated in that questioning.
Yeah. And they had said, they said, oh yeah, he's going to die before there's kids. He's going to die.
But they're also all wrong.
Also, yes. So they're also all wrong. Now, I'm sorry, I kind of messed up the timeline a little bit. She was doing this before the marriage had happened.
Okay, got it.
Sure.
That makes more
So
sense.
she was doing this before the marriage because she's like, hey, when's the king going to die? And they said, oh, he's going to die on this day in the year 1441. Now, he got married in 1445. So this whole story happened before the marriage. Sorry, apologies. I kind of messed up
I would
the
fire
timeline
that
there.
necromancer.
Yeah.
Is it a medium as someone who talks with the dead? Is it a because necromancers like summon the dead, don't they?
I just looked up necromancy, and it's either resurrection for the purpose of divination or even communication with the
It
dead.
is also communication.
So I
Okay.
guess
They know.
I take
a
it.
medium is where the dead speak through
that
me
person.
to someone else.
Yeah.
I think necromancy is summoning the dead in order to speak with them.
Okay.
Anyway, her astrologers and necromancers said, 1441, take it to the bank, happening.
Right.
And she's like, okay, cool. And then word got out that she was asking all this kind of stuff. And the Beauforts heard about this, and they're like, hey, Duke of Gloucester, sounds like your wife's trying to murder the king. He's like, well, no, she's just like into that TikTok thing of like go that weird part of like astrology, TikTok. Like just it's harmless.
Yeah, sure.
And they're like, no way, man, that sounds terrible. So they arrested her. They killed the necromancers.
They arrested her?
They arrested her. And they put her on heresy trial.
And they killed the necromancers?
They killed the necromancers. They burned the necromancers and the astrologers as heretics. And they were going to burn her. And then basically Duke of Gloucester like played all of his political clout to get her saved. And so what she had to do was, in November, very cold, she had to walk around London with a candle, and she had to keep it lit. And if it got blown out, she had to go light it again and start over again. And she had to walk around London, depends on who you ask, either barefoot or naked. I can't remember. But that was her penance.
Yep.
She had to walk around the streets of London with this candle, either barefoot or naked in November, and everyone got to laugh at her. And that was her penance. Duke of Gloucester like never recovered. He was so ashamed and sad, and so he now is retreated off to his little house in the woods. All right. The marriage happens. King doesn't die. King doesn't die. The marriage happens. I think his wife then dies just from like exposure and or just like getting sick. I can't remember.
Duke of Gloucester's
Gloucester?
wife?
Yeah. Anyway, so
It's heavy, man.
so then the Beauforts and Earl of Suffolk are like, listen, the king needs to have a kid. It's not happening. Now is the time to move on Gloucester. Oh yes, now I remember the catalyst. So, back at the Battle of Agincourt, so this is Henry V, they captured some of the nobility of the French, some of the best dukes of the French army. They captured them, and there was one dude, the Duke of Orleans, and he had been in jail this whole time, and he was like second in command to the king. Duke of Orleans was like, the guy. He was this great prize. They just didn't even know how they were going to ransom him for the money. They're like, one day, he's our lottery ticket. We're going to ransom him and get so much cash. The Duke of Orleans was having a great time in jail. Great time. He apparently wrote all of these like very fun, bawdy French love plays and like poetry. And he was just having a blast in jail, like writing plays and like romantic. He was basically writing romantic comedies while he's in jail. He's like, one day they're going to bail me out and I got to go back to court and do all the like French king stuff. But in the meantime, I'm going to get me some romantic comedies in there. I'm getting some Hallmark quality stuff.
Good for him.
So he's having a great time.
Was he getting paid for all this, or what was happening?
I mean, they were getting smuggled out of jail. They were going to France. He was becoming a literary sensation. It was kind of romantic. Here he is in jail writing romantic comedies.
So every once in a while he wasn't in jail, just going off doing other things?
No, he would like smuggle out the...
smuggle out the plays.
Yeah. For
funny,
some reason, I can't remember why, the Beauforts release him. Release him from jail with a pretty crappy...
Probably just literary merit.
Yeah. They're ready to play, and they're like, this man needs to be free. No. They release him. They release him for whatever reason, and Duke of Gloucester gets real mad. He's like, men died to capture that guy. I fought at the Battle of Agincourt. And so he's ticked. And so he gets real mad, and everyone's like, aren't you the guy with the witch wife? And he's like, I hate you.
Does he find out about Maine being given back?
He does not find about Maine.
Okay.
So the Beauforts summon the Duke of Gloucester to let's hash this out. Let's hash this out.
That sounds like a death sentence.
Let's
Never
talk
go to
about
one of
this.
those.
And murder him immediately.
Man.
Let's just have a talk about this. And the Duke of Gloucester thinks something's up.
Right.
Smart guy.
Yeah, smart guy. So he goes. So they're having like I guess it was maybe maybe a session of Parliament, and of course the Duke of Gloucester should be there. Right. And so he shows up. But he shows up with a bunch of armed dudes because he doesn't want to get killed.
Right.
And so he brings in a bunch of like Welsh mercenaries, and he brings in a whole bunch of people, and the Beauforts are like, this looks like somebody trying to usurp the throne, kill the king, and install himself as king.
Wow.
And the Duke of Gloucester's like, I'm not doing any of those things.
Right.
I'm just trying to like not get murdered. And they immediately arrest him. And so
what
he's
a clever plan.
I know.
Yes. So they immediately arrest him. They're like, this guy was trying to usurp the throne. And like the people bought it because they'd be like, well, how do you know he's trying to usurp the throne? Well, he showed up with a bunch of armed guards. They're like,
That's pretty good
okay,
evidence.
fair enough, right? Like,
Yeah.
if somebody like, walked through Congress with like a bunch of Marines with weapons. They're like, I'm doing this so I don't die. I'm like, oh, I don't know, man. That's pretty sketch.
Right.
So he goes into jail, and now they're all trying to figure out what to do with him. Okay. One of the great weird mysteries of the Middle Ages happens. 7 days later, the Duke of Gloucester is dead.
Oh,
Dead in jail.
but obviously killed by the Beauforts, right?
Well, we don't know.
Oh.
That's what lots of people think. There is a lot of speculation. So let's see.
Was he old at this point too?
He was old.
Yeah.
And he had had a spectacular fall from grace. He was like he was the regent of
Right.
England to the king.
Right.
To you humiliated my witch wife,
Right.
and now I'm like living by myself in my castle, like listening to plays, and everyone thinks I'm trying to take over the throne.
Yeah.
Simply because I'm next in line.
Yeah.
So here we go. I'm going to read from Dan Jones' book. Fate intervened. On Thursday, February 23rd, at around 3 p.m., some 5 days after he was arrested, Gloucester was dead. How he died or in what manner, the certainty is unknown, but only to God, wrote one chronicler. Now, AJ, you're going to love this. Some said he died for sorrow. Some said he was murdered between two feather beds. And some said he was thrust into the bowel with a hot burning spit. So, one of those three.
How do you not
Yeah,
know?
how do you not know?
Yeah.
How
So
are you
he-
like, I don't know, that big gaping flesh wound in his bowels, probably the feather beds is what
Yeah.
got him. Like,
So
how do you...
He either died from sorrow,
Right.
or they like put him between
Smothered him to death.
They put him between two beds and smothered him and sat on him until he died, or they put a burning hot poker in his bowel, which means the patuchus,
Yeah. Yeah.
and killed him that way. Who knows?
How do you not know?
How do you not know?
Seems pretty clear.
But what they and then later historians have said
I think
it's-
if the hot poker is an option,
You'd pick
that's
that one.
I wouldn't look at that and be like, you know what, he might have been smothered.
Die of sorrow. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I will take die of sorrow. It's people.
You're saying given the choice. He's saying if you see the poker, you know that's the one that
Oh,
did it.
yeah, yeah.
If that's even on the table,
Yeah,
you're
it's
like,
like,
okay,
it was
well, that's
probably that.
definitely it.
Yeah. He had probably suffered a stroke, is what later people have thought. But what they did was they took his body and they displayed it for everyone to see. So they'd be like, look, we didn't do anything weird to him.
Right.
Everyone's like looking at the poker. looking at him.
I don't know, he's burned around the bum
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
seriously, you guys. And they're like, oh, you don't know what that
Yeah,
is?
he had a chili the night before. So nobody knows. So nobody knows what happened to the Duke of Gloucester, but he's dead. The
Right.
heir to the throne.
Well,
I guess the
kind of.
person who has. You actually need to like declare who the heir is, and one of the problems is no one has declared who the heir is.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Duke of Gloucester is dead, either through murder or grief. Okay. And so this seems to be a triumph for the Beauforts. Hey, our number one guy is out. All we got to do now is like, let's make a baby. So they're like, let's get a baby. In Margaret of Anjou, we need to get an heir to the throne. And so everyone's encouraging the king to go for
Man,
it.
that's a lot of pressure
It's
on
a
you
lot of
as
pressure.
as a king.
I know. Okay. So this is now 1448. So the marriage happened in 45. Duke Gloucester died somewhere in there. 1448, people start sniffing around this whole deal to be married thing. They're like, wait a minute, what did England get out of this? Remember, there's grumbly boys everywhere. And those grumbly boys are particularly concerned about losing land in France. And you got a bunch of soldiers sitting there being like, are we throwing down? Are we kicking some French butt or what? Like, what's happening?
Yep.
And they're like, the king is occupied trying to have an heir. And everyone's like, oh my word. Like, I'm going crazy, sitting in camp, waiting for a war that's never going to come.
Right.
And the Duke of Gloucester, the one who wants to fight the French, is
dead.
now dead.
Yeah.
Anyway, 1448, people start sniffing around, and the secret article is revealed.
Oh, do you know how? It,
The French rolled into Maine, and they're
Yeah.
like, this is ours now. And then the English were like, I don't think so. And they're like, we've got this document signed by the Duke of Suffolk.
How did he think that was going to go?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
But
Guys,
remember the-
keep this secret.
as
And
they
they're like,
march
how
in.
exactly are we supposed to take control of the land? He's like, I don't know, but you better keep it secret.
Yeah.
So the Army and the Navy are ticked.
Yeah.
Ticked. Because here they are, they fought and died for France, and they've got men fighting and dying in Maine, and then they, like, gave it away to the Queen? They are mad. In
she's
fact,
the Queen of England now.
Well, she's the Queen of
Yeah.
England, but they gave it away to the family. And let's see, Churchill says this of the matter. It soon appeared that immense forces of retribution were on foot. When in 1448 the secret article for the cession of Maine became public through its occupation by the French, anger was expressed on all sides. England had paid a province, it was said, for a princess without a dowry. Traitors had cast away much in the field and given up the rest by intrigue. At the root of the fearful civil war soon to red the island, there lay this national grief and wrath at the ruin of empire. All other discontents fused themselves with this. The House of Lancaster had usurped the throne, had ruined the finances, had sold the conquests, and now had stained their hands with foul murder. The Duke of Gloucester.
Right.
So people are like putting pieces together. And whether you think that this is like unfair or fair, people are looking at it and they're like, man, these Lancasters have messed up royally. And so the Army and the Navy are ticked. All right. The king sends one of his little dudes to like pay the wages of the Navy one day. So the king, they're like, I know you're mad that all your friends have died in the wars with France, and we seem to have like given it away to the enemy so the king could marry like a total smoke show. But listen,
Here's some money.
Here's your pay. Here's some money. And the Navy, oh yeah, they totally killed that guy.
Yeah, of course they did.
So the little guy that was going to go pay their wages, they strung him up and killed him.
Yeah.
Like, oh gosh, this is bad. Eventually, political pressure mounted that they wanted Suffolk to be put on trial. They wanted to impeach him for, being a traitor because he gave away the lands. And the king is like, Suffolk's my buddy. I can't do this.
Well, he also has the get out of jail free card.
And Suffolk's like, I got to get out of like consequences free card. Ha. And the king's like, it's true, he does.
Right.
I can't do anything. And the Navy's like, we do not care.
Right. They'll just kill him anyway.
And at this time, so like everybody still loved the king because he was lovable, he was pious. He didn't seem to have like vices that were very obvious, but they hated the Lancasters. But the king they still loved.
Do they love the queen?
And they love the queen, but she's French, so they're a little suspicious.
Yeah.
But she seems okay. She's also quite young, and they're like, just do your thing, have a kid, just do your thing. So you get this a lot, where there's the love of king, but the hatred of the people around him. Yeah. Anyway, so the Earl of Suffolk is, the king says, listen, here's what I'll do. So they put him on trial, and then they say, yeah, you gave it away. That was super bad. You shouldn't have done this. People are mad at you, but you had the like little get out of consequences free card. So the king says, here's what I'm going to do. Earl of Suffolk, I'm going to banish you. You're just going to go to France. I'm going to banish you. And so the Earl of Suffolk's like, fine. So the Earl of Suffolk, he got all his treasure. He put it on his little donkey and his little sad cart, and he went to the coast of England, and he went on to. So in 1450, he was banished from England. He got in his little boat. It was a little fast-moving schooner, and he was sailing the English Channel to go to France when one of the warships of the British Navy intercepts his boat and stops him and brings him on board. And the Earl of Suffolk's like, okay, listen, I am a royal minister. I'm under the king's protection. Everything's going to be fine. He gets on the boat. The captain of the boat comes down and says the ominous and now famous words, welcome, traitor. So the Earl of Suffolk's like, ooh, that can't be good.
Right.
Not a good sign.
So, and there's an old tradition, I guess, on seafaring vessels that the captain of the boat can also like try criminals. And so the captain of the ship's like, we are going to retry you, Earl of Suffolk. And the Earl's like, I'm a royal minister. I'm under the protection of the king. They're like, yeah, you're right. No, you're under the protection of the king. And we were going to enact the king's law. Let's enact the king's law.
Yeah.
Oh, you're guilty.
Yeah, treason.
And so what they did was they took him into a little rowboat, and they took a little executioner, and they smote his head with a rusty sword half a dozen times until it was cleft.
Oh my gosh.
So they cut his head off with a rusty sword and took
I feel
6
like
hits.
He didn't deserve that.
He did not deserve that. Poor Earl of Suffolk.
Yeah.
I know, poor bro.
That
Poor
sucks.
guy.
He was a good chap.
He was a good chap. But now you've got.
That king is going to be angry.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he can't really do anything because it's the Navy. What's he going to do? Fight his Navy?
Yeah.
So But this,
But you can't have people enacting
Disregarding your
vigilante
law.
law and
This sounds
disrespecting
like
your
a coup at
command.
this
you
point.
can't.
I
This
would
is-
I would remove that guy from command
Yes.
and have him jailed, and like you got to do something as a king, or people are going to walk
But
all
things
over you.
things are bubbling up, and I don't know how it all shook out. But what this did show people was, hey, we're now living in a country where our king can't fight in a war. No one could even conceivably think of him being masculine in battle, and he was supposed to enact the king's justice. We got boat people chopping off heads of ministers. Like we got blood in the water, quite literally. This is bubbling up to something bad.
Bubbling.
There was an uprising in Kent, which was a province sort of on the southeastern side, the closest to France, where a lot of sailors lived, and where they had a lot of support for the guy who's next in line for the king, Richard, Duke of York. There was an uprising in Kent. Some dude named Jack Cade, which is kind of a cool name.
Cool name.
He is sort of gets this popularist uprising, and he gets a bunch of bros, and they march on London. And London doesn't really know what to do with him. And he's like, we demand to come into London. They're like, well, you're citizens, so you're allowed to come in. So they open the gates, and Jack Cade comes in. And Jack Cade goes and immediately kills the king's treasurer. He's like, take this, and he kills him. And then all of the citizens of London are like, whoa, this is crazy. What's going on? And so they actually killed Jack Cade. But the reason why, question. Oh, yeah. The reason why this is important is that he pretended to have the name Mortimer. And everyone listening who heard that name Mortimer, they're like, oh, I know what that means. So let's talk about why he took the name Mortimer. We have this. So the next in line to the throne is a guy by the name of Richard, Duke of York. Richard, Duke of York's father, was killed by Henry V for going against Henry IV. So his dad was killed by Henry V. His grandpa had rebelled against Henry IV. And so they have this long history of being on the other side of the whole usurping Richard II thing. They're not cool with that. They don't see the Lancastrians as legitimate kings. But Richard, Duke of York, he's pretty okay with it. He's not cool with it, but he's not an open rebellion. He was related to Edward III by Edward III's youngest brother, who was the Duke of York. He was also related to the king through the other side of his family, his mom. His family line can trace their name back to the House of Mortimer. And the Mortimers are this very famous family that own a lot of land, who are always kind of seen to be against the royal powers. So the Mortimer family were on this other side of the Lancastrians who didn't like, who took over the crown from Richard II. And so he was a Mortimer. He was also married to, his wife was a Neville, and that was probably the wealthiest landowning family in the north. And also they had land in Ireland. And so they were a northern family. His first daughter was Anne Neville, who's going to be important later on. And then he had 11 other children.
Wow.
So what was Henry VI's problem?
No kids.
And what does Duke of York got?
A lot of kids.
A lot of kids.
Yeah.
And he's also got a claim to the throne. He's got a lot of kids, including some beefy sons.
Yep.
A beefy son named Edward, a beefy son named Edmund, and a beefy son, well, not so beefy, but a son named Richard, who had a hunchback. Yeah. Anyway, so Richard, Duke of York, he has a line to the throne, and he was one of those guys fighting in France. And all the grumbly boys who were fighting in France loved him because he was like a man's man who could throw down.
Yep.
He was a knight at the age of 15. He was put into the Order of the Garter at 21. He fought in France a lot. And he was considered, he was law-abiding, he was virtuous, he was law-respecting. Churchill says of him, let's see what Churchill says of the Duke of York. He says, I wrote down a page that doesn't exist. Anyway, so Churchill says the Duke of York was sort of this law-abiding, upstanding person, not necessarily predisposed to rebellion, but But then you've got this person who comes in and is like, we're gonna rep the system, and he goes into London and kills the treasurer, and he takes on a rebellious name. I am not Jack Cade. I am Jack Mortimer, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's so cool."
Yeah.
I can't think of like what that would be today. What's like a rebellious name? I don't know, like Sid Vicious, right? Like that's such a name that's so rebellious from like the Sex Pistols,
Right. I can't think of a better example.
Anyway, so he adopts the name of like the sort of the popular consciousness of a family,
Oh, like Marilyn Manson.
yeah, something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah. And so he comes in, and people are like, oh, and then the Lancastrians are like, you see the House of York, they're behind this usurpation. Richard's like, no way, man, this isn't me.
Right.
I didn't do any of this. I have nothing to do with this. Anyway, he was in charge of Calais in France, and then he went off and was given charge of the Irish. So the Duke of York was living in Ireland, and he was in charge of the Irish, and the Irish, this is very rare, liked him.
Oh, wow.
They thought he was great.
Yeah.
He was a fair ruler. They thought he was a good ruler. They thought that he was fair-minded and law-abiding and loved the right things. And so now you've got this same kind of situation that you had with Richard II. Richard II was kind of like a weak doofus king, and Henry IV, who had kind of a claim to the throne, was kind of a boss. And now you've got Henry VI, who's kind of a weak doofus king. He's now been married for 7 years without a kid,
Ooh,
and
that's
people are
no
getting
good.
a little nervous.
Right.
And then you've got Richard, Duke of York, who's kind of great. I mean, he's definitely a man's man. He can fight in battle. He's got 11 kids, so that's not a problem. Everywhere he goes, people are like, he is a fair ruler. Okay, so this is where our episode's going to end. We're going to set it up for the next one. One day in Parliament, a little young guy, a little like member of Parliament, fresh, in his first term or whatever, stands up and he's like, listen, it's been 7 years and we don't have an heir to the throne yet. And he's like, I know this is unpopular. I don't think, we need to talk about this. King, you need to set up somebody who's going to be king in case, like, you take a rock to the head or something happens. You eat some bad ham. Like, we need to know who's in charge.
Yep.
And the little guy said, I propose it's Richard, Duke of York. And this is a sort of an honest, well-meaning thing. Like, it is the obvious choice. He should be the
It's a good
next in
idea to
line.
have a
It's a good idea
succession.
to have
Otherwise
a
it's
succession
chaos.
plan. And he really does have an unbroken line
Yeah.
in the king, and there's no babies, right? And so it should be Richard, Duke of York. And Churchill notes that honest men looking at the cause could find justification for either side. That it's not just complete browbeating. That this is that honest men could be for either side.
Either side being
Either side being sticking with the Lancasters. Let's just wait for him to have a kid, or maybe Richard, Duke of York, should be king. So people, and then there was a popular sentiment around the peasants. Because people are like, I think there might be war. There might be war coming up. Like, both sides are bubbling. We had this like dude coming in and killing treasurers in London.
Yeah.
This uprising in Kent. We've got people's heads getting chopped off in boats. This is maybe dark days coming. And the popular sentiment, which probably isn't a good idea, among the peasants was the fewer nobles, the better. So like, if they're going to fight with each other, that's cool by me. So the peasants were like, if they're going to fight, I'm not going to worry about it. Not a great thing. But anyway. And so this little dude says that that the Richard, Duke of York, should be king, and then apparently he sort of like overplays and overstates it a little too forcefully and is quite indignant in Parliament and is actually like really pushing for it to the point where the king actually like arrests him, locks him up, and is like, you got to cool off.
Right.
And when this happens, Richard, Duke of York, lands in Wales with an army.
Wow.
And that's well, not really with an army, but that's where we're going to end for today. So Richard, Duke of York, is coming to England, and for no reason, like he doesn't have any business or something, and he's landing with a force in Wales. Uh-oh.
It's a great way to
So,
end that. That was
yeah.
good.
This is coming up to a head.
I like it.
So I've got just to pique the curiosity for those in the in between. The thing that I want to have a debate is, with this medieval form of government, everything really hinges on the management of people, of human beings. Like, our king needs a friend to round him out so that he can be like a good person to rule. And we kind of live in an era where you kind of feel like our representative leaders could be completely interchangeable. Like, it doesn't matter if we have, this Republican or that Republican or this Democrat and that Democrat. They can almost be interchangeable parts because we have a system as opposed to like a person, or like our government really functions on systems and systems and data and voting structures and sort of lobbying support, not of people but of anyway. And then, but in the Middle Ages, you definitely have it more like our national crisis is that our king doesn't have a best friend. And, those are very different kinds of realities to live under. Sure. And I just want to tease that idea out a little bit in the in-between.
Sure. Okay. Well, Graham just referenced it, but we do in-between episodes after these main episodes. Those are available on Patreon, patreon.com/classical stuff. I think if you support us at the $10 a month level, you get access to those in-between episodes and monthly AMAs, which we also just recorded today. You can also find us online on Twitter at Classical Stuff. You can email us, theguys@classicalstuff.net. And we have a website, classicalstuff.net. It's pretty great. I think that's everything. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Let's do this again next week, guys.
Roll.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.